You live your whole life, and then in 1 second you learn what it's like for primal terror to swallow you, mind and body. He was standing in the hallway, lit only on his left side by the bulb. Just as he appeared in the photograph I'd found, he was very small, much shorter than his brother, my father, Eric. The family had said he'd always been boy-faced and a bit skinny. Now, standing there, he looked old and sick as well. But he looked angry, too. Not for a moment did I think he was alive, and some terrible mistake had been made. I knew, instinctively, that he was not really there, that I was looking at Herman in the depleted physical state he had died in. "He was wrong," he said again, his whole body trembling slightly. He jabbed his finger toward me, almost in tears. "I could have been a chemist. I had the grades." I think I tried to speak then, but wasn't able. Uncle Herman kept his finger pointed in a threatening way, as if it were up to me to change the past. He turned with creaky slowness and took a couple of steps deeper into the hallway toward the kitchen, leaving all light behind him, becoming a silhouette. He turned back just before he reached the threshold of the other room. His face was a black blur, but his voice was still clear. "There's a fourth body, you know," he said, voice hoarse. "Shovel still in the shed."
Knife Point Horror. Tales of supernatural suspense written, produced, and narrated by Soren Narnia. Now transmitting from SpectreVision Radio, anywhere you hear podcasts.
Ugh, you said you were over him, but his hoodie is still in your rotation. It's time. Grab your phone, snap a few pics, and sell it on Depop. Listed in minutes, with no selling fees. And just like that, a guy 500 miles away just paid full price for your closure. And right on cue.
Hey, still got my hoodie?
Nope, but I've got tonight's dinner paid for. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste. List now with no selling fees. Payment processing fees and boosting fees still apply. See website for details.
Springfest means more sun, more fun, and more free at Lowe's. Keep your yard in line with an additional free Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a select Ego mower, trimmer, or blower. Plus, keep landscaping fresh with Stay Green 1 cubic foot garden soil, 5 bags for $10. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/8 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
SpectreVision Radio.
Telemetry and launch condition.
Well, some other observers.
Hey, it's late night.
It's late night on the astral plane, where it's never too late. With your host, Ryan Singer.
It's more fun to believe.
Hey everyone, welcome to another voyage of Late Night on the Astral Plane. It's your buddy Ryan Singer. I'm happy to be here with you today, tonight, this morning, this afternoon, whenever it is you are catching this. I just had a great interview I'm going to be bringing you next week. But I want to touch on some of the subjects that came up, specifically mediumship. And I wasn't even really planning on doing this, but I happen to have this book that I had read previously handy, and it's Life Without Death, on parapsychology, mysticism, and the question of survival by Nils Jacobsen. And I just happened to open up to one of the pages, and let me just this is kind of a pseudo book draw here. So let me just read you what I opened up to. Oh my God. And then it gets down to the bottom there, it references something close by. Sometimes the medium's voice may become completely altered, in which case the medium is said to talk with the direct voice, which resembles the departed. Often during the golden heyday of spiritualism, so-called physical phenomena or also occurred, above all materializations. White forms, which clearly resembled the deceased, took shape before the eyes of the seance participants and could even be photographed. Unfortunately, these impressive phenomena seem to have completely disappeared now, just when we would be able to record and investigate them. In any case, no materialization medium seems available for investigation in Europe. Various individual mediums have been caught cheating, especially in connection with these materializations. But on the other hand, there are certain individual mediums who have been investigated by critical researchers for decades without any attempt at cheating having been revealed. Whether some materializations were genuine paranormal phenomena or whether all were created through fraud would be difficult to ascertain in retrospect. Such a critical, objective observer as Ducasse was able to photograph a materialization himself. Paul Biger, himself I don't know if I'm saying that right, skeptical of the belief in spirits, became convinced after several personal experiences that materializations could be true phenomena. During direct voice, which is seldom reported now, little trumpets may be used, held by the medium or swaying apparently freely in the air. Ordinary seances can be held in daylight, but with seances in which physical phenomena appear, the room is in darkness or lit only by a weak red light. Therefore, the trumpets are painted with luminous colors. Voices, which are said to come from the spirits, are heard from the trumpets. In this case, the spirits are said to talk directly without using the medium's organ of speech. One of the most remarkable factories in the world can be found in the city of Columbus, Ohio. There, spiritualist aids are manufactured on conveyor belts, swaying and talking trumpets, lifelike spirit manifestations in natural size, ectoplasm by the case, and different models of astral bodies. In other words, here is everything a medium needs to perform a spiritualist seance, and false mediums from all over the world place orders through this firm. These false mediums, who operate in most countries, then appear to make contact with, quote, the other side, end quote, and let ingenuous, faithful, mourning people believe that they are meeting dead relatives, while in fact the manifestations were bought by postal order from a firm in the USA. We have sent for material from an hour-long trick seance and can assure you that the effects are fantastic. People were not let in on the secret belief that they were seeing a genuine miracle. A number were so terror-stricken that the hair literally rose up on their heads, and we had to quickly turn on the lights and turn off the spirits, which for the most part were made of luminous material. What's interesting here is obviously anytime there is a space for belief, there is room for a hoax and room for somebody to try to make some money off of anybody willing to believe in something. People are seeking mediums, oftentimes mediums more so than psychics, even in times of intense grief, which will be part of the conversation next week that we get into, because we talk about like fake versus real. And I think the trickster energy here, the idea that there is tomfoolery, there is boondoggles happening, that is something that is just laid into the phenomena itself that unfortunately I guess we have to accept it. It'd be nice to clear all this out, but the fine line between entertainment and hoax, or not scandal, but grift, I suppose, maybe might be the word. You hear that a lot in comedy nowadays. Now, or, these people kind of grifting to the hardcore right just to make a bunch of money politically and things like that. Mark Macy also talks about the disappearance of, he doesn't specifically mention the disappearance of seance materialism, right? Or materialization from seance, right? But he talks about in a timeline of ITC research, he talks about, something kind of disappearing and going away. Let me bring this up if I can. I've been working on, trying to come up with, through the help of great resources that are not, of my own creation. There are certain things that, have been milestones, so to speak, in the world of let's see here, in the world of ITC. What's interesting here in the seance, there's something called direct voice, right? And in the world of electric voice phenomena, there's also direct voice phenomena. Some of the earliest ITC researchers are direct voice is what they're after. Because we have reports from the very beginnings of the 20th century of the first ever instrumental transcommunication. Now, what is ITC? It's the attempt of researchers to receive intelligent communication from outside their perceived consciousness, right? Outside of the sensory, it is basically from thin air through a device where, now, depending on your thoughts on consciousness and where you think communication can come from, it is a mechanism, right? Much as we have a vocal cord, the ITC device is the vocal cord for the spirit, or for the intelligence, for the alien intelligence, or whatever, right? Parapsychologists and other scientists have long been testing and proving the existence of something called direct brain-to-brain communication. And I cannot believe I haven't talked about this already, but I think I did on the last one, right? Where we talked about DBBC, right? And now the Rhine Institute has some of the world's leading scientists studying this phenomenon. And that's why it's exciting that next week I'll be talking to someone from Rhine itself. And we'll be talking about all this kind of stuff. And it's going to be really, really great. Now, what we have here, too, is an interesting thing. When direct voice came through in seances, right, oftentimes maybe hoaxed, put yourself in the shoes of someone who goes to a seance. And I actually just started watching Peaky Blinders. I don't know if you've seen Peaky Blinders, but I can't believe I just got on to Peaky Blinders. I can't believe I just get into this show now, right? So there's actually a scene in one of the episodes in season 1. I believe it's season 1, yeah, where there is one of the characters goes to a seance. I won't tell you anything else about it, but it's you can see it's played really well, right? It's played very, very well. The emotional context of what it could mean, right? To go and get what you believe to be as deeply, deeply personal information from a complete stranger who somehow is connected as a medium to someone you love or to the other side in a very distinct and clear way. It's gotta be something really, really intense. Now, and I think I can tell you that it is intense. Over the years, I've had the great pleasure of having readings from psychics and from mediums specifically. And some of the information that we get, that I have gotten, has just been like, oh, wow, this is deeply personal and it feels profound in many ways to me, right? So, it's tough though, right? Like when it comes to, and I get asked, somewhat, not that often, but people will be like, hey, can you recommend this type of person to me? Can you recommend a medium? Can you recommend a remote viewer? Can you recommend a psychic? Can you, an animal communicator? Or can you, all the different nuances and the specializations that come within the world of clairvoyancy, SB, mediumship, psi abilities, telepathy, etc. And, it's like, okay, well, what are you looking for, right? I feel like I got to reread this book because I just reopened up to the reincarnation page. Because when we get into like mediumship, right? And let's say you're with someone who has guides to give you information, right? Those guides don't necessarily mean they were, former humans necessarily, right? As my understanding of it is. now you're getting into an idea where Robert Monroe talks about how when he was doing out of body work, one of his main guides was like another version of him, a past life version of himself, or maybe a future life version of himself, giving him information and guiding him. And it's bonkers to think of it that way. Have you tried doing a meditation where you just kind of say, hey, I want to, I'm going to do this tonight because it's a full moon. Hey, me, let's take a ride, right? Like let's go for a walk and talk. Let's travel through space-time and maybe give me some information you can that would be helpful to me. Or maybe just kind of, reassure some things for me that that need reassuring. I mean, if there's one thing about the human condition that I think we all can agree on, that at any given moment in time, we have at least a question or two that we'd like an answer to. And we need reassurance about something else that we believe we've already, committed to or decided about or something like, for a great example would be like, am I on the right career path? Should I move? Should I buy this house? Should I move to this apartment? Should I get this new car? Should I make a large investment in this company or something? Maybe a friend wants me to invest in a company, or I have two different job offers. Which one should I take? I'm torn between the two. These are a lot like, I guess according to the psychics that I do know, and I think people go to psychics, and psychics specifically, I'm not talking about mediums so much right now. They go to psychics for, I guess, three really big reasons, right? One is romance. Two is, financial. That could be job or otherwise. And three is, health, potentially. Those are probably the three big ones. I don't know if you're psychic, you can chime in on the comments and let me know, like, oh, there's a fourth category that's huge. Romance, money, health. Those are probably the three big things that are getting hit on when people are going to see psychics. So, like, those are the questions, right? Those are like the questions. That's where the questions come up. Like I'm saying that we all have at least one question or two that we'd love to have the universe answer us. Part of me thinks that the universe could just be this. Universe is just this character that's just like, and I think I talked about this in an upcoming conversation as well, where it's just like, hey, come on, get on board. Come on. I mean, I want you to remember all the abilities that you have. Please. Like, I gifted them to you. They're just part of the fabric of everything that is, including yourself. Please just remember already, right? Spiritualism and spirits, right? Here's a poem. But even through the spirit world exists, even though the spirit world exists, however it may act, it cannot prove itself as fact. And even though God shows himself upon his throne of might, the thought will out despite. Hallucination, some will insist. I almost said hallucination. Hallucination is the word, not hallucination. There's so many fascinating stories about real experiences with mediums, with psychics, with paranormal phenomena, whether it's cryptids. And I know the Bigfoot world is turned upside down right now. At least that's what everybody wants you to think. And, that's clickbait headlines. The movie's not out yet. Only a handful of us have seen it. Not me. But what's interesting here that gets buried within this disclosure of UAPs and UFOs that's happening is I believe it was called psionics. And when you have these people that allegedly are trained to communicate through telepathy to the UFOs, to take control, to start steering or controlling the craft, or you have to use your mind to be able to drive the ship, essentially. Basically, there's a couple different steps that get skipped on that disclosure of that fact. One of them is, yes, we can use our mind to control physical objects. And we are saying that out loud in front of Congress. Two is, we know how to train people to control physical objects with their mind. And the third is the thing they disclose. And we do it. And on the biggest scale possible when it comes to like woo-woo stuff, and that's UFOs, right? So not only is it possible, not only do we know how to do it, but we are doing it. That is the implications of the psionic agent disclosure. So if, bear with me, if we can, in fact, know this to be true, which I believe we can, the implications are such that this all isn't woo-woo wild stuff. And thoughts are powerful. Not only are they powerful, they are all creating, and they are not controlling. That's not the right word, but our thoughts can control things. So it is important what we do. And it's important how we ask the questions, not just asking the question. The first step is like being willing to ask. Let's say that. So let's say we're asking the questions the wrong way. Sure, it's like, oh God, I wish we were doing it the right way. Here's the good news, friend. You've busted through the blocks of disbelief and got to the point where you're now asking the questions. That can't be understated, how cool that is. You're there. You're already trying to do manifestation meditations, maybe out of desperation, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of intellectual study. The point is you're doing them. You've busted through the blocks of disbelief, and you're at least willing to be like, let's see if this is real, right? I mean, I've done guided meditations for, manifestation of money and, things like that. To me, it's a very fascinating world, the guided meditation world. The point is, these things, the further we go, the more we know. And, and also the less we know to a large degree. But when considering the previous things that remained unknown to us, that we could identify, at least to a certain degree, that we were curious about, then we discover those things, right? Which then pop up two more new questions that we didn't know in advance by solving one, by getting one answer. But still, it's like, hey, one step forward, two steps back. Yeah. If it means we keep growing and we keep knowing, because here's why one step forward, I'm just realizing this, and I can't believe I'm just realizing this now at my age. Here is why one step forward is always two steps back. Are you ready for this? And you've probably already thought of this many times, and you're going to be like, hey, Ryan, no duh. We all know that. That's why that phrase is not a bad phrase. That's why it's a great phrase. So why is it a great phrase? Because one step forward, two steps back means that one step forward made your world so much bigger that in reality, it has created two steps back from what you thought the size of the world was previously, right? If the world is only, in your mind, 5 foot by 5 foot square, right? That's the surface area of this world. And you take one step, and taking that one step, you realize, oh, the actual size of this world is 10 foot by 10 foot. Now, in relation to how far you are on your journey to the other side, to ultimate knowledge or truth or whatever it is, now you're 2 steps backwards from where you were standing when it was only 5 feet. I think we just figured it all out. I think we just figured it all out, didn't we, man? Hey, man, I just gotta say, I'm not over here doing the math, man, but it really feels like, what's it feel like, Todd? It really feels like one step forward, two steps back. It feels like you nailed it. Feels like you really nailed it, man. I just gotta say I'm proud of you. Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate you chiming in just to give me a little pat on the back there. I do greatly appreciate that. Now, I got to tell you, when it comes to one step forward, two steps back, the world has become bigger, and we still are further, even though we're now further back. But we're further, even though we're farther back. Sometimes words are too fun to play around with. I'll try to keep it moving. But when it comes to the idea that, parapsychology, which has been around for quite a long time now, paranormal investigation, which has been around for hundreds of years, it's been pop culturized, I guess, if that's not even a real word, but we're going to make it a word. It's pop culturized. It's been popped for about 25 years now, a little over probably. That doesn't change the idea or the fact that it's still super, super fascinating. Now, parapsychologists will tell you that one of the keys to understanding their field and in the breakthroughs, probably are even contingent on a deeper understanding about what consciousness is. Now that is in our wheelhouse of interest, not necessarily our expertise of knowledge, but it's definitely in our wheelhouse of interest. Because when it comes to trying to understand consciousness, maybe we're going too far deep into science and some other things when I believe it was my dear friend Oscar, who I was introduced to through Jessica, who said that we don't need a new way. We don't need to create a new way to frame things or to understand things as much as maybe we need to go back. And that is what initially reinforced what was already a very healthy curiosity in Hermeticism. And Hermeticism is to thank for, certain laws like, polarity, as above, so below was another one. So if we can go deeper into maybe the past, discarded knowledge that was actually helpful, and the further that science moves forward, maybe the more these things have been proven to be true in many regards, then maybe we can get a deeper understanding of where we came from and who we are. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter where we came from. It doesn't matter. And what I mean by that, it doesn't matter the specific location on the globe where we came from. Because we all came from there. If in fact it's one little spot, right? Which, anthropologists and, paleontologists and scientists, they seem to have kind of narrowed it down. And it's that Middle East region. It was like, the cradle of civilization, as it's called. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is it's really fascinating and cool to understand that and to be able to pinpoint it and know it. But it doesn't matter, because what matters is right now, and what matters is where we are going. And I believe right now where we are going, those two things are married to one another. When it comes to the idea of, I would never say that we're in the middle of a mass awakening. I would never say that. You look around the world and you would think it's quite the opposite, a mass asleepening. People moving backwards, or the people pulling the strings at the top are creating a backwards motion, not a forward motion. And to say that forward is better than backwards in this case is very much so, right? We are not taking one step forward, two steps back in a good way when it comes to the way, specifically the Western world and the United States of America is conducting itself and shaping laws and policies and things like that. But I would say that nonetheless, in spite of the best efforts of those who wish it not to be so, on an individual basis, more and more people are having an aha moment when it comes to UFOs, paranormal, ghosts, psychokinesis, ESP, telepathy. There's people out there still trying to shit on and take down the telepathy tapes. There's people who are they're hell-bent against any kind of thought that could be the beautiful phenomena that it is. And to me, it's sad to see that. It's disappointing. It's not totally unexpected. That's just some people, they can't help themselves. Some people are only happy if they're miserable, that kind of thing. And that's a fundamental thing that I'm not a psychologist, not yet. I am looking into furthering my education. When you don't want to pay your college loans, go back to school. That's all I'm going to say to you. And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about who God knows what, but it's probably the current state. I mean, there's a lot of really bonkers, interesting stuff going on. And there's also some wild stuff that is bonkers and, the bad kind of bonkers going on. But I'm going to speak to a little bit more why I think and I believe more individuals are having that aha moment, right? Because I believe I have evidence for it. And we're going to be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month. No commercials, baby.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, so we're back. Why, Ryan, do you believe that more individuals are having that aha moment when it comes to, being open to the paranormal, supernatural, the mystical, the esoteric? I'll tell you why. Because I'm getting more and more messages from people who never messaged me about this stuff before. People who have been in my life the whole time. Some of them have shown interest in other areas of, woo-woo stuff, woo-woo adjacent things. But I will say this, more and more people who have never really wanted to talk to me about this kind of stuff or messaged me are messaging me about these things to the point where I can't keep up, quite frankly. I can't keep up with the messages and that tells me something. That tells me that people are paying attention to it more because it was always there, but now they're paying attention to it a little bit more. And, with all the ills of modern society and, social medias and the internet and mass communication and feeling like you have to be available 24/7 because of the cell phones. The one thing one of the things is that it does create a situation for information sharing, and a lot of that is misinformation. A lot of it's bad stuff, and it's meant to try to create a certain vibration for you that is, right. But you can't filter. Can't filter it. It's a careful, considerate curation that one must do. And I don't know. I mean, I look around and I think to myself, holy shit, man. If you would have told me all this was happening 8 years ago, I'd feel like I was insane, right? When I started this podcast, if you told me that, 13 years or whatever it has been later, when I started Me and Paranormal You, the older version of this, that all of this would be occurring. I wouldn't want to believe it. It's not more fun to believe this specific current situation of current events, of what the United States is involved in and things like that. It's not more fun to believe in that case. Now, it is more fun to believe that we will get through it and get out of it. And that takes action. That doesn't just sit around and hope it all works out by, checking out and playing MLB The Show 2024 all day long, every day. You got to pay your rent. You got to do things. You got to, be there for your neighbors. You got to, maintain your friendships, things like that. But with that comes, many, many different things happening simultaneously. And one of those things is like real, seemingly real, well, it's definitely real movement in disclosure. Carefully considerate curation of the information that's coming out about disclosure is important. I mean, there's a lot of books you can read that are coming out from whistleblowers and things like that, but I personally don't read Lou Elizondo, and I don't have really any interest in Lou Elizondo's writings. That's not to say that he doesn't have things to contribute to the conversation, right? His information and things he knows is beyond my pay grade, as they say. Most certainly. I'm not going to sit over here and act like I know more than Lou Elizondo does about disclosure. He's been intimately involved, at least in some way, with this stuff for years in his role. Now, that's why he wrote a book. That's why he wrote a book about it. How much of that book is bullshit? I don't know. How much of it is like misinformation? I don't know. How much of it is trying to get you scared of aliens? I don't know, because I haven't read it. So I'm not going to talk about that. But I do know this, that there's a lot of really fascinating, intelligent, considerate people who are interested in getting this information out there. And I think that is why, at the end of the day, it will. People keep messaging me about the scientists, what's going on with the missing scientists. And I don't know. There's obviously mass speculation going on. An incredible amount of speculation going on about it. And people speculating about the connection between I think it's 8 of them now. Or 7 plus the Major General. I don't know. I don't have insiders. I don't have informants. I don't have like a deep throat giving me paranormal information, things like that. We're more concerned about like trying to explore consciousness over here and trying to understand its connection to being able to communicate with alien intelligence and with the other side, through intention, through out-of-body experiences, through meditations, guided meditations and otherwise. And how can we, begin to accept that we are more than our physical bodies, that we are made up of more than just physical matter. And because of that, we can perceive more than the physical world, as Robert Monroe would write. That is part of the affirmation of doing the Gateway Voyage meditations. I do know this. When it comes to seeking out a medium or seeking out a psychic, go with your gut on it. And also, in regards to wanting to develop your own mediumship skills or psychic abilities, our friend Karen Rontowski has a course on just that, on developing psychic abilities. You can take, I highly recommend that course. I got to tell you, I've never been someone who considered themselves to be psychic in the past, right? And then you have to bust down these blocks of disbelief and get through to the other side. It doesn't mean I'll ever go out and do psychic readings for people. It's not to say I won't. I mean, I've done that in like workshop things in those kind of settings when you're developing or you're trying to foster these things. And, getting through the disbelief of it is probably the hardest part. And if you can get through that, then, I mean, literally the sky is the limit, I would imagine. But, you know, spiritualism and you know, spirit communication, all these things are hyper fascinating. And they point to one thing, and that is that the after form, after physical death, consciousness carries on. And that has taken many forms throughout history. Let's read just another little snippet that I believe ties into what we're talking about here. And this is this is from the same book. This is about ghosts and apparitions. Okay. Time does not have the same meaning in the quote unquote inner world as in the physical. The etheric image can even be perceived at a point in time when its physical counterpart, for example, a person's body, no longer exists in the physical universe. After form. But what does this theory of apparitions have to say about the question of survival after death? Hart's supposition is that consciousness is absolutely dependent on the function of an individual's brain, a very common viewpoint, parenthetically, which will be discussed in greater detail in chapter 16. The phenomenon of ESP projections indicates that at least a substantial number of apparitions of the living are instruments for consciousness, and their behavior is connected with such aspects of conscious behavior as memory, opinions, emotions. He argues further that we arrange all verified cases of apparition in chronological order, beginning with those long before the projector's death and ending with those long after his death. The supposition that consciousness is absolutely dependent on the function of the physical brain should therefore indicate an abrupt alteration in the character and behavior of the apparitions when the point of death is past. But the observed facts do not indicate such a change. Nothing other than what could be expected from the altering of viewpoint and motivation which death could be thought to produce in the projector. The conclusion is that the burden of proof now lies with those who argue that apparitions do not give any proof of survival after death. The burden of proof lies with those who argue that apparitions do not give any proof. Prove that they don't prove. Right? When it comes to the burden of proof and things like that, I'm not a big burden of proof guy necessarily, but which I know there's probably some out there going, wait, did he just say he's not a big burden of proof guy? Listen, when it comes to the unknowable world of the unknown, we're just trying our best to fit in, to get in where we fit in, not trying to understand it all, but not trying to change anybody's mind. Burden of proof is indicative of argument, of making a case or, arguing a side. That's not what we're doing over here. I have no interest in being a paranormal lawyer, or arguing paranormal, like civil law or civil or law, framework, constitutional law. That's it. I have no interest in being like a paranormal constitutional lawyer, arguing that the things that build and the framework of what it means to have a paranormal world, right? So when it comes to burden of proof, it's like, okay, whatever. But you can't argue the fact that if apparitions are tied to the function of the brain, once the brain is dead, and those apparitions continue, at the very least, there should be a drastic change in the behavior and the style or whatever of the apparition itself, if it were to happen again. So, in that way, yes, indeed. If, in fact, ESP apparitions can be conflated with after death apparitions. One would need that burden of proof indeed. So I say yes. Yay. The man from Southern California says, yay, yay. I will agree. I will vote for that. In this instance, let my voting records show that I say yay. Yay to apparitions. Yay to apparitions. Maybe that's the name of this episode. I think we're going to call it Yay for Apparitions. Maybe it's a short one. I got a big week coming up. Lots of interesting things I'll be doing this week. I hope you have a good week planned, can be productive, can work on something for yourself. Maybe try to carve out 30 minutes to do a hobby that brings you joy. If at all possible. I'm going to have a week filled with as much joy as humanly possible this week. That's my goal. And I already know I will be successful in such an endeavor. I finished the show Billions finally. It took me 4 or 5 years after watching the last episode I watched, whatever it was. Anyway, I'm starting to sound like Chuck Rose. And I will be successful in that endeavor. I do say, my good man. But yeah, billionaires, nay. Apparitions, yay. Apparitions, yay. Billionaires, nay. I saw a video today that Robert Bigelow sold Skinwalker Ranch because of the hitchhiker effect, or the effect that it was having on himself and other people. Believe it or not believe it? I don't know. It was an interview with George Knapp. Bigelow's a billionaire. Do we make an exception on the nay? More later on that. We don't have to make decisions about people over here. Okay, thanks for listening. RyanSingerComedy.com. That's got tour dates when they pop up, which will be like during the summer and other times, I'm sure. But yes, and then, so I'm still reading The Idea of the World by Bernardo Kastrup. It's a slog. I reordered Skinwalkers at the Pentagon because I lent out or lost my previous copy. I have to have this book. Ties in directly to a project I'm working on right now. So that, I'll update you about more on all that stuff later, I suppose. Fitz is streaming on Relay, the app Relay. So you can watch Friends in the Sky, the Investigation Mutilation Ranch. You can watch it on Relay. We're working on other streaming services now. So very proud of that thing, So I'm the one who edited that movie together. I did not the heavy lifting on that investigation. Now, when it came to the editing, I did the heavy lifting because I was the editor. But that tracks. I'd say that tracks. But yeah, my first full-length documentary that I've ever edited. So, fingers crossed that you like it, that people like it, hopefully, and I know that it showcases, the beauty and there's the bright spirit and soul of Mama Sue Gutierrez, who is missed every day over here by me and anyone who knew her. So anyway, I love you. I hope you love yourself. Take care of yourself. And remember, it's more fun to believe. And you can put this on at 3 a.m. because it's never too late out here on the astral plane.
Now receiving frequency transmission.
So if you take tarot the way that pop culture portrays it, which is that the cards themselves have some kind of hidden power to predict your future, the jury is very much out. However, if I were to do my own tarot and have such a connection with my own subconscious that when I see these symbols, I could apply any meaning to it. And I basically use it as a way to explore my unconscious and subconscious mind. There's a lot of things that you don't know that you know that are buried deep inside of you through things like meditation and therapy and all of that. You get these epiphanies that bring it out. And I think that symbols are another method to do that, these kinds of internal excavations. And so it actually doesn't require a belief in the supernatural, although it totally helps.
Transmission complete. Stay tuned to SpectreVision Radio. Stay.